the rise of cash PT closers.
If I could pick the most important role within the practice and the reason that we've scaled to one of, if not the largest cash-based practice in the US, is because we have this role.
So I think it's a really, really exciting new industry that's exploding right now. My prediction is in 2026, this is going over the next couple of years, this is going to be the new standard. Welcome to another episode of the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Today, we're talking about something that is brand new in 2025 and something that every single PT and cash practice owner, not just practice owners and entrepreneurs, but individual PTs who are listening to this want to keep an eye out for, because it's allowing not only practices to grow much faster than they have previously and finally solve their bottlenecks that are in their sales processes within their practice, but it's also allowing PTs to create brand new positions and new careers for themselves and have way more autonomy in how much they make and how much they get to move around and work remotely. It's pretty dang wild. So today, Ben and I are going to talk about the rise of cash PT closers. Basically, sales reps who are helping not only follow up and convert leads into patients, but converting evals into packages without doing any actual treatment themselves. It's an interesting and exciting new model that we're seeing happen all over the country. It started in our mastermind. It started in Ben's practice. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about it. Ben, you just hired a second patient intake coordinator. Can you tell us a little bit about what that position means?
Yeah, essentially, they're the first impression of our practice. If I could pick the most important role within the practice and the reason that we've scaled to one of, if not the largest cash-based practice in the US, it's because we have this role. It's really the differentiator that I really don't see other practices doing. And we have a doctor of physical therapy doing all these calls. Traditionally, most people have an admin, somebody in college, somebody that is
your lowest paid employee.
Yeah, your lowest paid employee is the one that has the most important position in the entire practice. And so we move this over. This has always been a doctor of physical therapy role, except for about a 6-month period. So for the first three years of ProKinetics, I did all the discovery calls, and I was really reluctant to hand it off because I knew how important the role was. But I knew I needed to get my time back. So I did what everybody else was doing. I'm going to hire an admin to do these calls. And even some were hit or miss. One just did completely terrible, just not somebody that did well. And then we hired somebody else that did do a decent job, followed the script, did everything to a T, but still couldn't convert the way that I did. And even though I couldn't even train her any better. Like, you're saying everything, your tonality is great, you're doing everything that I'm doing, I can't. Well, the difference is I have doctor in front of my name.
Yep.
I have authority. I'm a healthcare professional. We see that no matter what she said or did, there was still going to be a 5 or 10% difference between how she converted versus I did, simply because of the conviction, me being a medical professional and having doctor in front of my name. We even saw our answer rates were higher. So we send out text beforehand. Hey, so-and-so saw that you were interested in physical therapy with us, saw you through our website. This Dr. Ben, I'll be giving you a call in 5 minutes. Our answer rates were higher because they're like, oh, a doctor of physical therapy is actually calling me, right? I'm going to make sure I answer this.
Right. Versus more guilt and wasting their time,
Exactly. So we just saw our answer rates be substantially higher, our conversion rates 5 to 10% higher, even though the calls were the exact same. And at scale, that 5 to 10% difference is massive. It's massive. And so we hired on a PT to do these calls, and he's been doing the calls for almost 4 years now for us. And he's at his capacity where he can't get to all the leads himself for Oakland clinic. And so we hired on a second sales rep, a patient intake specialist sales rep, to work alongside him.
And it's interesting because up until recently, you're the only person out of hundreds and hundreds of clinics that we've worked with that has an actual PT on the front end, actually having a sales expert on the front end of your business that's also a doctor. It's having a setter or a patient intake specialist was pretty much unheard of before the last year or two in healthcare. So now that you've had John in the front office, you've had some admins trying to pick up some of the slack when you grew beyond like John's own like ability to manage all of your inbound leads. So how easily were you able to find, like, when you set that second job positioning, how many applications did you get?
Almost 100. It was definitely over 80. I actually had to shut it off. We would have, if I would have kept it open like 3 more days later, longer, we would have had 100. I had the listing open for I think 10 days, and we had over 80 applicants, all qualified doctors of physical therapy. It's actually kind of sad to see how many people are actually looking for roles that aren't actually into treatment, and just how burnout the entire profession is.
Yep.
It was wild. Like, to give you guys an idea, when we open up a position for like a front desk, like patient experience director, or not director, but patient, like person that is our front desk, who greets our patients, stuff like that, we get about 100 applicants of everybody on the side, because there's no qualifications needed, right? It's just like, you don't need to have your doctorate. You don't need to have your master's for this. This is like green patients, like an entry level job. We'd get 100 applicants. And like, that's a lot. We were getting 100 doctors of physical therapy. Like that, it's wild that for this position, we were getting the same volume as we do for entry level positions. That's how high the demand is in this profession, because they're so burnt out. It was sad to see, but I knew we were going to get some traction, but I had no idea it was going to be that much.
Right. And what like an incredible opportunity for PTs who are like, I can't see myself treating for the next 10, let alone 30 years in this setting, but I also don't want to take on the stress and the anxiety of starting their own business. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for a lot of PTs who want to continue to have an impact and work with patients and help guide them towards the best solution for themselves without having the restrictions on your time and freedom that is created being required to treat, 5 to 8 patients a day. So I think it's a really, really exciting new industry that's exploding right now. My prediction is in 2026, this is going, like, over the next couple of years, this is going to be the new standard, I think, especially once practices break that $20,000 to $30,000 a month mark, and they can actually afford to have someone in the front office, like, or in, the front end of their practice, who's an absolute like savage, who knows how to communicate the value of PT, who can provide, and educate patients over the phone and make them, excited about continuing treatment. Yeah, I think it's exciting. What is the position like? What exactly are the responsibilities of this role, and what does compensation look like?
Yeah, so they're expected to follow up with answer the phones, follow up with website leads, follow up with missed calls, follow up with Facebook ads, any lead that comes in that displays interest. It could be even Instagram DM. They're responsible for taking care of all the leads, making sure they get followed up with, make sure they get scheduled if we're the right fit. So their focus is solely on sales and lead follow-up and lead management, pipeline management. That's their only responsibility. They don't have to worry about anything else. They don't have to worry about rescheduling patients, treating patients, nothing. Their entire focus is strictly on making sure that the people that are raising their hands by opting in, that they need help, are getting the help that they need.
Right. And what a competitive advantage it is going to become now that High Level, the premier CRM provider for agency owners, has now released, or is about to release, their outbound voice AI platform, which allows all agencies, all clinics that are using Go High Level, to create automations that have a very, very hyper realistic AI outbound calling all of their inbound leads and qualifying and triaging them and booking them for discovery calls, and for, in some cases, appointments just with AI. And this is going to be a new era that the market and businesses and consumers are all going to have to correct for, because it's going to get out of hand really quick, because everyone is going to be using it. There's very little restrictions on it right now. And for a clinic like yours, or for other, clinics that have risen above that 20 to 30K mark and can afford the front end patient intake coordinator position, that is going to be a massive differentiator, because most people are going to have to speak to AI with all these smaller pop-up clinics versus actually getting to talk to a real doctor over the phone or on Zoom. And that is going to be a breath of fresh air after, 6 to 12 months of outbound voice AI getting, exploding across every clinic and agency.
Yeah, I mean, the competitive edge is insane. I understand people's hesitancy to adopt it because it does cost more. The investment is more.
It's the most important position in the whole business.
Yeah.
It should be a high ticket, high paying position. That's why like sales reps and clinical marketer, they're the best paid people on the entire team, as they should be, because without them, no one else on the team can make anything, and we can't help anyone.
They can replace their salary as a PT as well in a lot of cases. And then the upside is much greater, right? So it's all performance based. Which is great. So it also helps us with us scaling. The only way that we are having to pay out is if we're generating revenue, right? So it's also based on how you structure the compensation model too, is important.
Yeah. And do you mind sharing what your compensation model is looking like? I know you're still like nailing down like the best way for it to work, especially as you're scaling that department. I know the first one is probably going to be slightly different than the second one, but
so the first one I hired, I didn't know what I was doing, and
worked out.
It worked out really well. And he was supposed to be the PT for Des Moines clinic, and we were ramping him up, and he's like, hey, I want to ramp more quickly. I'd like more hours. Is there anything else that you could help me with? I'm like, yeah, you can help me out with phone calls. And so he started helping me out with phone calls here and there, and he ended up actually liking that just as much as patient care. And he's like, what are your thoughts about me just moving into a full-time role of this? And I was like, I was so not burnt out from calls, but I've been doing calls for 3 or 4 years at that time, calling people on the weekends, calling people all hours of the night. Yeah. I was just like, yes, please. And so he stepped into the full-time role with that. And we just moved him over from his salary position as a PT and kept his pay the same. Yeah. So he was all salary, which is not good for a sales role. You really have to luck out, which I did, because he performs very well without that compensation model where it's more outcome based. But this new role, it's more outcome based. So they do get a base, they get a low base, and they get paid based on show ups, not conversions. If they don't show up to the appointment, you don't get your bonus. Right. They have to show up. Your whole responsibility is getting people in the door. So our physical therapists have an at bat for a patch conversion on it. And we know that, hey, historically, if we get them in, we know that they're going to convert 90% of the time into packages. So knowing that's a great thing too, is we know our metrics, and it helped me be able to structure this pay package because we know our numbers.
Right. And is there any comp that's tied to whether or not those patients convert into long-term care plans?
There will be. There isn't right now. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with that quite yet. But yes, there will be. Where I see some people with sales reps do this incorrectly is setting it up so it's only if they convert into a package. They don't have full control of that entire outcome. If you have multiple PTs that they're scheduling for, they're going to be biased to always schedule with the one that they know is going to be at the highest likelihood. And then you're going to have a PT with a huge wait list and somebody else with like 10 openings. And it's because they want to schedule with somebody that's going to have the highest likelihood of them moving on to forward with a package. Right. Because that's how they get paid out. So there will be, it's probably going to make up less than 5 to 10% of their compensation as right now.
This is an idea. Could be horrible. What if they were responsible because they're the highest trained salesperson on the entire team. Mm-hmm. What if they were also responsible for the training of the PTs, and they have to round robin it? And then if someone is they have to distribute leads or book calls to those people. And if they're underperforming, it's their responsibility to help train them up. And if not, cut them loose and get a different one.
That's a growth stepping stone that we have within next for this role. So when I was hiring
a revenue director kind of position.
Yeah, exactly. So anytime that you're hiring, you want to show what growth looks like within the company on that final interview, right? Yep. And so on every final interview, whether it's for this role, physical therapist, we show them what growth looks like within the practice. And that's actually stepping into sales manager role, where now they're managing also the PTs and helping them convert as well. So that's definitely part of the role. Not part of this position. Yep. It's part of their growth trajectory, 100%.
I love that. So insanely valuable position. And if you're struggling to get an admin and you just keep, if you're struggling to retain them and they're just not doing a good job of converting leads into patients, maybe we should change that position, because odds are your admin has way too many responsibilities while also being the lowest paid person in your practice. So we'd encourage you to put a job posting out there to see if you can find a PT, even if they do it part-time, because the way I see it is there's going to be so many opportunities and so many practices trying to hire a DPT to be their patient intake coordinator that a lot of them aren't going to be able to afford to pay them what they need to replace their salary. But with the amount of lead volume that most clinics have, one good remote PT closer could easily manage 3 to 4 different practices until they find their, their larger clinic like yours, Ben. So consider getting some feelers out there, start building your talent pool that you could pull from when you're ready for that position. What does that do to your admin position, real quick? Like, what exactly are they doing now that lead follow-up and bookings are no longer their responsibility?
Oh, it's a game changer. Your retention, like the turnover that people I see across the clinics that have their admin also doing the phone calls, greeting patients, doing all the different tasks that you don't want to do for 15 to 20 bucks an hour. It's a big ask, big ask. And it's just going to have a lot of high turnover. So our turnover's decreased substantially because now they can focus just on the patient experience. They can focus greeting patients when they walk in. They can focus on scheduling out the entire plan of care. It used to be where, eval would come up to the front desk to get scheduled out, but couldn't because they're on the phone call with the lead, right? Now this person walks out the door, they scheduled maybe one visit with the PT, but the PT was busy, so they had it because they had the patient afterwards. Now this person doesn't have consistent times, drop-offs are higher, right? Now our patient experience is not as great because they can't greet patients when they walk in through the door because they're too busy on the phone call. Now the eval conversion rates are lower because this person walked in the door and didn't have a proper greeting and just felt like a number, right? There's a big trickle down effect of having your admin still do phone calls, how that's actually affecting the patient experience. So that they get to focus completely on true patient in-person experience.
Right. And then the caliber of person you get to hire for that position completely changes because now it's not, you need this jack of all trades. Now you just need someone who's phenomenal at relationships. And that admin position becomes a patient success coordinator level kind of position where their only job is to make sure that these people are greeted, they have an incredible experience. And then when the PTs are done, helping make sure that their next follow-up visits are all booked and cash is collected. That is a very different individual. That is a much happier individual because they have their one role. They're not the basically catch-all dumpster for all the crap you don't want to do.
Right. Yeah. And think about it, like being able to hire somebody proficient for sales, be able to have the emotional intelligence and the warmth to greet people when they come in, be able to also be type A where you're organized. And also when scheduling patients, rescheduling patients, ask yourself, if somebody had all the skill sets, do you think they would be applying for a position that's 15 and 20 bucks an hour?
I mean, that just sounds like a fun position. Like if I wasn't me with all of the things that I'm driven to like do, and I just wanted a job that I would feel really good showing up to every single day, like that is a good job. That's a great job. If you enjoy talking to people and just seeing what you can to build systems that just make people's day, like that's a fun career path for sure. Anyway, I digress. There's a couple other different sales models that clinics are using. We saw one of our past clients, a buddy, total badass of a dude, Peter Yu. Talk about the model that we both saw. He just a job posting about it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it go. So essentially what again, I only saw the post. So I can't really see what's going on like the back end and what his end goal with it is. But essentially what the position he's hiring for is hiring on a physical therapist to do all the closing. So they do all the eval. One PT does all the evals. So it's like 5 to 8 evals a day. They can make upwards, I think, between $120,000 to $200,000 a year. And then they're teeing it up. I don't know if it's handing off to a PTA or a PT. I'm not sure on that. I'm thinking PTA because the compensation is so high on the front end that you have to make up for the labor costs somewhere else. And so it's most likely, again, I have no idea on the back end on it, but that's why.
If you're great at training and educating like your protocols and how to get great patient outcomes for the avatar that you have, I mean, you could afford to pay like a PT, a front end closer to do all of the evals. And with all of the money that you're saving in those reduced salaries from having 4 PTAs instead of 4 PTs, you could pay them an insane amount of money, have an absolute stone cold killer on the front end, giving such a good experience, having a crazy close rate. You could probably bump up your rates. Yeah, it's a pretty cool model, but I will say it does have its drawbacks. Like I think there's so much power in your marketing of saying like, we're not a traditional clinic. You're getting 60 minutes of one-on-one attention from a doctor of physical therapy. I think that's a really, really powerful message that a lot of people aren't used to being able to have. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. The thing is like, And the thing is, the buyer doesn't know this about the industry, but there's PTs out there that are better than PTs, you
Yeah.
know?
I bet
And
there's personal trainers out there that are better than
right,
some PTs.
especially if you can highly incentivize pay
Yeah.
PTAs, top 10%, you're gonna be able to attract the top 10% of PTAs, which are top 10 PTAs are probably better than 70% of PTs, honestly.
Yeah.
And so you're able to track them because of that. So, anyways, but yeah, I agree with you. It changes up your marketing a little bit, and I don't know how the market will respond to that. But if you have an absolute killer on this front end on the sales call or
Yeah.
the sales doing the eval, the PT doing the eval, a lot of things in business are solved by great sales. If you get a
Mm.
great person in that sales role, yeah, it'd be awesome. The thing that I think is going to be have a heart, there's pros and cons to it too. From a recruitment standpoint, I get it. Like it's a pain in the ass to try and train PTs on how to do sales. Having to hire and train somebody, it's a bear. So if you can negate all that and have it just all baked into one person and you just have to train one person, it does get easier, but it does make you more susceptible to risk. What if that person quits and you've got all these providers that don't know how to do sales and you don't have anybody to do the sales? What happens then? And I think it's also going to be really difficult. It'd be different where we looked out with our hiring for our
Mm.
position is remote. They can do it. The calls can be done anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're doing in-person evals, you've got to be living in that area. And so you're limited to the radius as well of the PTs that are in your area that are that gung-ho about doing sales. There are very few PTs that have the mindset to do sales at that volume and also want to do it for that volume. To do 5 to 8 evals every single day in a high sales position and not see any fulfillment, that's something too from a psychology standpoint. It can burn people out because a lot of PTs love to see, myself included, you love to see what happens. You love to see that progression and see people progress versus you're just doing evals, you never see them again, right? Most likely. And you just don't, and that's what you kind of live for as a PT, and you're taking that away. So it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack for this
Yeah.
position. If they leave, you're trying to find another needle in a haystack, and you've got a time crunch because you've got 4 other providers that you've got to pay for, but there's no patients incoming because they can't do sales.
Yep.
So
You do have to be a psycho to be a real closer. Like you're like the archetype of a closer is someone who is financially motivated enough to offset the emotional burden of hearing no all the time. It is such an emotionally taxing position. And that is, I can't think of anything more contradictory to the typical PT archetype of like how people like where we get like their energy from and what brings them the most fulfillment. And that position, if you get in a rut, which I think is more likely, probably the first biggest risk with having that kind of model, because it's such an emotional position. If you have a fight with your spouse the day before, if you didn't get a lot of sleep, if you are just in a bad mood because it's getting cold outside, it's just that time of season, your close rates fall through the floor.
it's like you're in Milwaukee in the fall or something.
So many things can throw off your mojo in sales. And it's not like if, it's when. It is no matter what, you're going to have these cycles where your energy isn't where it was 2 months ago when you were just on fire because you used up so much of your energy. You got a little cocky. You started to not follow the same process. Then your closes went down and down. You get more and more stressed. That stress pours into the next eval. That one doesn't close. Now you're wondering what the heck happened. We have to go back to what was working, retrain, and then ramp back up. That is the cycle of closers. And I know this because I've managed a lot of closers at Clinical Marketer, and that's why you always hire 2 closers for that exact reason, to offset each other's ebbs and flows. So I think it's a really, really cool model. I think there are going to be challenges that people will have to figure out. I wonder if that may be a potential other tweak to that model. It might make more sense. Maybe because I'm seeing this being done in functional medicine, but remote high ticket closers where it's like, okay, now we can afford to have a couple people who are running these and doing a virtual evaluation and then selling the in-person visits. There's a lot of successful virtual practices doing just telehealth, selling $2,000 plus programs all virtually. So I wonder if that is the next potential evolution of this to offset that potential problem.
Yeah, I think it really doesn't come down to actually the model being the issue. It comes down to staffing, in my opinion,
Hmm.
is the bottleneck for
What do
when
you
it
mean
comes
by
to
that?
sales.
Expand on that.
mean by that is like Peter's position, it's being in person.
Yeah.
So you're limited there. If you can expand this to remote, like you saw, we got over almost 100 applicants for this sales role,
Right.
right? If you can open that closer role to the entire country and it be remote, then you don't have these hiring issues, right? But then you have then how do you get them to close at the same rate as in-person evals, right?
Yeah.
It's almost telehealth at that point, right? So how do you do that? So it's like, there's really no perfect perfect way to go. It's like choose your heart.
Right.
That's what it
Right. As is all
yeah,
things for
right.
sure.
Choose your heart.
Yeah, it's interesting because the high ticket coaching space has reached the level where it's kind of a bubble that is bursting a little bit. And if you haven't built yourself to a certain level, it's getting harder and harder to like build it from the ground up these days. But because of the success that so many virtual and online like wellness coaching programs have had, those sales models and those sales processes are now merging into the practices, which I think is really smart. It's pretty exciting, keeps overhead low. In some cases means you need less space to do higher volume at your clinic. Yeah, I see the position of admins changing for maybe not forever, but the clinics that are going to be the leanest and grow the fastest, they're going to switch to this patient intake coordinator and patient success coordinator roles, and then maybe this closer position might take off. We'll see what happens with Peter. You can guinea pig that one for us, and we'll follow up.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. But yeah, it's just be night and day too. About I don't know how insurance practices are going to keep up. Can you imagine hopping on a phone call with that ProKinetics where you're talking to a doctor of physical therapy? They spend 15-20 minutes learning about your entire story, and you call an insurance-based clinic of somebody that answers the phone, tired, low energy. Hey, what's your name, date of birth, and insurance? They're not a doctor of physical therapy. Like, what's that type of experience? Like, how are you supposed to compete?
Right. And you walk into just a super yeah, right. It's really exciting. Healthcare is changing in a really, really big way. It's not just in PT, but the cash model is exploding. MDs, NPs, functional nutritionists, chiros, obviously, like everyone is leaving in droves to join either cash pay clinics that already exist or just start their own because there's so much freaking opportunity out there right now. We'll end on this. There's one other position that I've seen one clinic utilize with incredible effectiveness. It is a wellness coach, which I think is another remote PT position that a lot of PTs would absolutely love. You're not treating, it is basically stacked into their packages to create longer retention for patients. Because if they're stressed out, if they're not eating right, if they're not having the right habits outside of the clinic, well, then the treatment is going to be nearly as effective. And so one clinic implemented wellness coaches who do Zoom calls, have a set number of Zoom calls with this wellness coach to basically talk through their lifestyle and help them work through their stress and anxiety and all of those things, leading to much better outcomes, but also creating this emotional hook, this really strong relationship that keeps that person wanting to continue coming back, making them more likely to join their continuity where they can continue wellness visits while also getting ongoing maintenance from their clinician, whether that's PT, functional med expert, whatever it is. So I think that's going to be another position where we see more PTs wanting to jump in and take that, because the impact it's been having on just monthly recurring revenue and patient retention is pretty wild. So I'm predicting that's going to be one that starts to grow more in 2026.
Yeah, I think it's a huge value add and something exactly what people need that just as much as they do the PT. And that's what blows my mind too, is like people like, yeah, I can get somebody better in 3 visits. You can't. So you're also going to be able to help them dial in their sleep. You're going to be able to help them also improve their nutrition. You're going to be able to help them with their exercise, all this stuff like in 3 visits. No, like, well, no, I'm just getting people out of pain. Like that's where you're selling yourself short.
That's the problem with Western medicine. It's only reactive. It's not focused on how do I actually permanently help this person? What are their mindsets and habits that are causing this to happen? What are, the things that the beliefs we need to shift in their mind to keep new behavior to prevent future things from happening? That is where I know we both see healthcare going, and it's really cool to get to, for clinical marketer to play a small role in helping make that happen with our clients and seeing them reach massive success. So anything to add, Ben?
No, it's just interesting to see what people adopt, and highly encourage people to start considering hiring on a doctor of physical therapy to do the intake calls. If I could pinpoint top 3 reasons why we scaled where we have, it's because of that, for sure.
Right. Folks, if you want to learn how Ben and I can help you scale your cash clinic to multiple 6 figures per month, or even just to the next level that you're trying to get to, go to clinicalmarketer.com, apply to work with us. We'd love to audit your practice, figure out where your greatest constraints are, and help you put together a 3 to 6 month game plan to stay in momentum, get less, of the stress off of your plate, and make sure you're working on the right stuff at the right time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you later.